So I'm going to hasten on to our next speaker. I'm delighted to welcome Adam Vincent to join us at conference today. Now, Adam has crossed the thresholds of many schools, maybe some of yours even, in his many visits to schools as a member of His Majesty's Inspectorate. I still struggle with his rather than her, Adam. I'm stuck in the last century, I think. But yeah, Adam's a qualified teacher and former head teacher. So he has done his time at the chalk face. And of course, he's a passionate advocate for our subject. Adam inspects widely and contributes to national training, policy, and quality assurance. His work focuses on how high quality art and design education meets the diverse needs of pupils and supports aspiration, achievement, and creative thinking. So absolutely aligned with NSEAD and all the work that we do. Adam, I know we're very eager to hear your reflections on the current position of art, craft, and design. Welcome to conference. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And you're absolutely right. It took a while to get used to his rather than her, but I think we're there now. But thank you. Yes, I'll just take a moment to share my screen. Okay, and I'm sure someone will tell me if that's not working. There we are. So thank you very much for this invitation to speak today. It is an absolute privilege to join this community of art educators. I'll be sharing the findings from Ofsted's subject report and also the research review, focusing on what they're telling us about what we see in schools, what's working well, and also where we're getting things in the way of building those pupils, building those strong, expressive and meaningful curriculum experiences. And whilst I can't and won't, it's not Ofsted's place, tell you how to teach, I can clarify what good looks like from our perspective and what we see when we're looking at subject leadership and what's working well. We do publish some of our training. However, the release of Ofsted's training materials should be done for Ofsted and by Ofsted. So I politely ask that question. Thank you. So our findings came from a wide evidence base. We reflected on what inspectors had seen on the ground across a wide range of settings, including those working in really highly disadvantaged contexts. And the soon-to-be published subject report that followed visits to 50 schools. They were primary, secondary, special education settings, pupil referral units. And these visits were about understanding how art and design is structured, how it's taught, but also how it's experienced by those pupils. And we drew on the research review as our sort of theme and strand that ran through, and also on inspections, but also with interviews with teachers and also with pupils. Now, as I said, Ofsted, we don't prescribe a particular style or format, but a strong art curriculum is thoughtfully constructive and inclusive, and it's one that helps pupils to acquire that practical, theoretical, and disciplinary knowledge. And these are three terms that we've used in the research review. We don't expect you to use them, particularly in conversations with us or with anyone else, but they helped us to shape what we meant by those different aspects of knowledge. And this allows pupils to build proficiency and personal expression over time. And as I say, whilst we don't advocate one method, we do expect the national curriculum to be covered and to be covered with care. And so this is about the kind of curriculum thinking, that sequencing and that ambition that can make a difference for our pupils. We see strong practice when these three forms of knowledge are clearly identified in the curriculum, and they're developed and in balance. So that practical knowledge, the ability to control materials and tools, and that pupils have opportunities to practice and to try again. And theoretical knowledge that connects pupils to the histories, the movements, and the ideas of others. And then finally, that disciplinary knowledge that gives pupils the ability to interrogate and to discuss meaning. The research review then goes on to describe two kinds of endpoints in art. So these are those convergent and divergent endpoints. In convergent art, pupils are heading for precisely what the teacher knows they're going to be doing. Often this will be a technical outcome, like the ability to blend tones or becoming proficient with a particular painting technique. Everyone's work in these times may look quite similar because that's the point. They're honing that control, that precision, and that confidence with that particular medium. In divergent work, when we see those divergent outcomes, pupils use what they've learnt to produce something personal and something unique, something that isn't fixed. But we still have those high expectations. Pupils still draw on their knowledge of artists, of composition, of the different media that they're using, and they combine these in often original ways. And the most effective curriculums don't pit these against each other, but they build strong foundations through that convergent work and then give space for divergent outcomes that reflect a pupil's individuality and their own voice. One of our key findings was when there was that weaker curricular offer, it often resembled a disconnected set of projects. So good planning shows knowledge and skills that are developed across a key stage, and that pupils will have opportunities to revisit key media, but not necessarily in the same way. They will use drawing, painting, and sculpture with increasing sophistication as they move through that particular key stage, exploring new concepts and applying that knowledge in more demanding contexts. A curriculum that shows clear thinking, not a standalone string of projects, but it's something that builds with a progression, that technical, conceptual, and allowing for the maturity of those people to come through. While we often see a wider range of media being used, we do expect, as I said, that those three areas of the national curriculum, so the three media that are identified. So we do expect to see drawing, painting, and sculpture, but we also know full well that we'll also see photography and digital learning, just to name two. But there will be opportunities for these to be revised and revisited and deepened over time. Something that we did see that was in some schools, pupils arrive in year 7 and find themselves repeating tasks that they'd already done, often with the same techniques and in exactly the same way. And this wasn't just dull for pupils, but it also limits that progression. The subject report calls this out directly, and it highlights the importance of sequencing the curriculum so it builds on that earlier learning is built on, not a repetition of what's gone before. And that this means that there is a clear subject and phase transition that's planned. And as I've said, the national curriculum is there. It's not something that people need to go back and reinvent. And whilst it's understandable, secondary schools will often receive pupils with a really wide range of experience, but the progression is still required. It requires that clear sequence curriculum that builds pupils from where they are. What we really look for is planning over time, that it's ambitious, that pupils should, as I say, have opportunities to revisit those media, to deepen their control, and to build that experience. A good year 7 curriculum doesn't restart the color wheel when schools know full well that pupils have covered this in year 5 and year 6 and possibly before, but it builds from those key stage 2's foundations. Now, many schools face real timetable constraints where curriculum time is minimal. It can be hard for pupils to develop that control and fluency. Good practice may careful use of sketchbooks to support reflection, and also returned to media and ideas across key stages. Strong teaching gives pupils something that's something intimate, something to explore. Teachers model and pupils have opportunity to practice. And we heard that there was precise and considered use of language to support pupils with their understanding about mark making, about tone and process. And in schools where this was a real strength, where this was seen, they had protected time to allow for experimentation and for rehearsal and to revisit those core processes, not to just repeat them, but to deepen those that understanding. But in weaker lessons, we saw that there was minimal opportunity and there was too much talking about art without it being really well considered about what was going to be said rather than about making it. One of the striking things that we noticed in our visits was how powerful art and design can be for pupils with SEND and also those facing disadvantage. Many of these pupils were really thriving in art and design classes, especially where teachers had really thought carefully about how to adapt tasks rather than simplifying the ambition. But this wasn't universal. Sadly, in some weaker schools, pupils with SEND were either overly scaffolded, led through the motions with limited independence, or they were left out of the ambitious parts of the curriculum altogether. Sometimes pupils with disadvantage was sometimes they had less access to materials or to time, and in some schools art was dropped in favor of extra maths or English. But where inclusion was strong, schools had found ways to make this as rich an experience as possible, sourcing low-cost materials or using sketchbooks well to give people space and for their choices and their expression. So the message here is really clear that the art room shouldn't flatten difference, but it should amplify expression. That the right curriculum and the right support, all pupils can thrive, and that we should avoid reducing the curriculum or assuming what pupils can't do. For disadvantaged pupils, the quality of provision, those space, materials, and the opportunities, these matter enormously. Often these will be the only times for many of our pupils will have the chance to experience and to do these things. In the strongest schools, we saw that leaders and teachers engage seriously with this part of the national curriculum, not just as a list to comply with, but as an opportunity to build that cultural and historical understanding. They thought carefully about who their pupils would learn about, but also why. So instead of just defaulting to familiar names, they made really informed decisions about which movements, which makers, which movements in time would best support pupils to develop their understanding of the subject. And really importantly, there was a balance. Pupils did encounter those significant figures from long established traditions, but these were also studied alongside artists and makers from different cultures and contexts, as well as contemporary practitioners whose work speaks to the present time. This wasn't about diversity for its own sake or about ticking a box, but it was about ensuring that the curriculum felt rich and relevant, but also historically grounded. And that the key here was that it was intentional, that it was rooted in subject knowledge, and that the curriculum had a purpose. Now, art, so the assessment in art is subtle, and it's not about just leveling or reducing creativity to tick boxes, but schools where they had a clear understanding of what they needed to know, where they had clear ideas about what progress would look like, they'd use sketchbooks and dialogue and outcomes to reflect on how pupils were doing. Assessment works best when when it's in the moment. In the best sketchbooks, we saw that they weren't those polished portfolios, that they were working documents full of questions, experiments, and notes. Where it was less helpful, where there were endless evaluation paragraphs or generic targets. And where subject knowledge was strong, this was where teaching was strong too. In primaries, art is often taught by the class teacher, and many said that they felt unprepared. That in the strongest schools, they either had specialist teachers or they had shared that subject planning and gave time for that continual professional development. And we don't expect every teacher to be a professional artist, but they should feel that they are able to teach with integrity and clarity. Where non-specialist teachers were supported and guided by clear curriculums and shared expertise, we saw that quality generally improved, and that departmental collaboration in secondary schools and that ongoing learning were really important features, where teachers felt that they were able to share their own specialisms with each other. These were features of really strong provision. And for leaders of schools, the implications were really clear: to ensure that the curriculum is well sequenced and that it's ambitious, to prioritize training, to build that subject expertise for staff, and to provide time and resources for sustained practical work. And that assessment should genuinely reflect the learning in art and shouldn't be a repetition of what might be used in maths or an English lesson, because they're not appropriate forms of assessment for art. Subject leadership needs clarity, and it needs time to think and consider. And curriculum planning should take account of the progression across a phase and not just within them. And that means that secondary schools should ideally be aware of what pupils have studied in Key Stage 2 so that they can build on this rather than repeating it. Now, these findings closely map to Ofsted's ideas about what the quality of education judgment would be, the intent, the what is being taught and why, that implementation, how well is it being taught, and that impact. Are pupils building rich knowledge and skills? Where art education was strong, these three aspects were really clearly aligned to not only the curriculum as a document, but also what was then seen in schools. Where it was weaker, one or more of these strands had sadly frayed. To sum up, the strongest schools curriculum we saw were rooted in knowledge, structured over time, and gave space for both that fluency but also freedom. Sorry. They made room for all pupils, regardless of their background or need, to be able to participate, but also to succeed. And our job as inspectors is to see what's there, to notice and to understand and to recognize that quality. And your job is to make that quality possible, not to tick boxes or to jump through hoops for us, but to build something strong and meaningful for your pupils. And thank you for what you do. Art and design matters. It helps pupils to think critically, to express themselves, but also to engage in culture. The subject report calls to make art educators more thoughtful, to have that structure and that ambition. So all children, not just those lucky few, can benefit from a really high quality artistic education. Thank you. I know that no two schools are the same, and I hope that the findings I've shared will help to contribute to and to help you to reflect on what high quality provision might look like in your setting. And I believe that we'll have some questions a little later.
We will. I love that slide, Adam.
Thank you.
No,
as
no,
I say,
but yes, but no.
There we are. I shall stop sharing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adam. That felt very reflective, and really kind of giving us a sense of what you've seen,
Yes.
which of course gives us that wonderful national perspective, and that the need to approach curriculum with care and clear thinking really resonates, I think. And also, you know, where you're talking about the power of the subject to meet the needs of every learner at, you know, at its best. That's what we can do, perhaps uniquely, in many senses. But you also talk about the flattened curriculum, and that's what we're going to sort of turn to I think, with the next part of the presentation.